Welcome to Forum 360, where our focus is a global outlook from a local view on your PBS channel. I am Leah Love, your host today, and today we have Pastor Mark Ford and Officer Nakia Jones. One of the many challenges our diverse communities face is a lack of unity between people of the community and our police officers. Today we would like to bridge that gap by dispelling some of the stereotypes and reinforcing them with the truth and understanding. Officer Jones was first sworn in 1996 in East Cleveland, and then in 2002 she was sworn in as the first African American female officer in the city of Warrensville Heights. She currently still holds this role as well as Senior Response Officer. Pastor Ford is the Executive Director of the Love Akron Network, as well as serves on the Advisory Board of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives by Ohio Governor John R. Kasich. The Love Akron Network's mission is to pray, unite, and collaborate in ministry for the advancement of spiritual and social transformation in our communities. Thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
So let's begin with, what does civility mean to you?
Someone has defined culture as the way we talk to and treat each other. If that's true, then civility is showing respect and kindness to people that perhaps we don't agree with, but because they are a God's creation, we honor them.
And what's the same question?
He actually nailed it. Or even if you do not agree with them, you show a mutual respect where you can agree to disagree.
Okay. Why is civility something churches or religious institutions should be involved with?
Well, every major religion has a founder, and my founder is Christ. I'm a part of the Christian faith. And his whole message was love. His whole message was how he treated people with deep respect that the culture looked down on, the woman at the well. So every religion's founder points them, I believe, to be people of peace and respect.
Okay. How do you begin what seems to be a tough discussion about the gap that we see in both sides?
Oh, you know what? I was asked something similar to that before. I think that our biggest problem is we don't listen. Everybody likes to point the finger, but we don't listen to one another. And I think if we all sit down with love and understanding and really listen to one another, I think we're both saying the same thing on both sides. But I think that in order to start the conversation, you have to have both sides willing to sit down and say, you know what, I can be quiet and I can actually listen.
So how would you tell people to address this topic any differently in being sensitive to different races, cultures, and feelings?
I think it starts with our story. All of us have a story. It's amazing when you hear people's story how some of the things that you've been hung up on just kind of drop away because you understand their world a little better. You understand what shaped their thoughts and their views and their personality. So for me, it starts with, tell me your story.
Absolutely. I totally agree with him. We all have grown up differently. Mm-hmm. So we may have different views on different things. Not only that, I will talk about the book later, but even me as a young child, I had prejudices because I grew up a certain way and I would watch certain TV shows or different people in my family would believe certain things. So that became my belief system. Until I got out into the world and I said, oh, that's not true. Oh, wow. But thank God I was able to be open-minded, because if I wasn't, it wouldn't have mattered. I would have believed this is true and this is not. And I think that you're absolutely right. Where did you grow up? What's your story? How did you grow up? What is your beliefs? Oh, and then sit down and you can say, well, I heard this. Well, no, that's not true. Oh, and we can laugh about it. Oh, well, I thought this. Well, no, it's not. And then we realize we're not so far different than we think.
And that's what I would suggest is, before we talk about where we differ, why don't we talk about what we agree? Right. You know, that's appreciative assets that we talk about. And so appreciative inquiry, I think, is what they call it.
So finding our similarities
Sure.
is definitely the beginning of that conversation. So how do you speak truth without stereotyping and generalizing in either direction?
Well, you can speak the truth in love. And I'm not sure that it's possible to never have a generalization. We're all, once again, as you said, shaped by nurture and nature. And so I think it's a learning experience. I hope that as I grow, I'm less that way. But like she said, if we can laugh about it and go, oh, okay, I understand now. To me, that's a start.
Absolutely. He nailed it.
Okay, for those that believe there is an unfair disadvantage, what do you tell them are some ways the police can or are addressing the problems and issues that they are feeling?
I think that a lot of us now are starting to communicate more with one another. Police officers are saying, you know, we're going through this, and we're sitting back and we're starting to really communicate and talk to one another. I think a lot of people don't understand how stressful being a police officer really is. And I think that in a lot of ways, I wish the community could jump inside of us. You have to remember, we are doctors sometimes, we are lawyers, or sometimes we're counselors, sometimes we see so many different things. We have to be so many different things for different people. And so I think a lot of times we take that home and we don't talk about it. But I think now that we're starting to share with one another, and then a lot of the community now is even being more open to listen to us, I think that it's helping. I think that's helping a whole lot.
Okay. And can you tell us some things that have worked and that haven't worked as far as your way of bridging your communications with the community?
I think community-oriented policing is probably the best thing that any department can have. Unfortunately, a lot of departments are understaffed, so you can't get a group of officers that are in community-oriented policing. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but usually community-oriented police officers, they stop on the street, they get out their cars, they go speak to, right, they go and speak to the community. Hey, my name is Officer Jones, if you ever have any issues. They go to the schools and just walk around the schools, they talk to the students, and now a lot of times they're being pulled off of community-oriented policing because they have to be on the street. So I think that is a real big disadvantage. But if you can have that in your community, it is an amazing advantage, I think, because now you get to interact with me at a good time, not always in a crisis. And I think that the bad thing is most people interact with us at the worst of worst times. And that causes their stress, you know, and then they come off wrong, and then the police, you have to remember, and we're human beings. And I think a lot of people think we're these robots, and we're human just like everybody else. We get upset, we get angry, we laugh, we cry, we do everything that everybody else does. So we take all of this stuff home with us also. But I think the best thing that any community could do is get a community-oriented police department, and also have pastors involved. They can sit down and say, hey, sit down with maybe have some meetings, have certain part of the communities, have the police, where you can sit there and kind of listen to both sides.
What if you have a community member who says, I want to go to the police department because I want to learn a little bit more? Is that welcome? Do they just walk in? Do they need to schedule an appointment? How would that?
It probably depends on the department. For our department, you can come in and say, hey, can I speak to an officer at any time? And then you can just, you know, talk to us, or they'll send an officer to come and talk to you. Even if you have a particular officer, some people just feel more closer to other officers. You can say, hey, well, when is Officer Jones working? I just want to sit down and talk to her, and I'm very open for that. Like you know that I'm the leader of bridging this gap. It's very important because it's going to affect everybody. And people keep saying it's not going to affect me. Yes, it is. Yes, I don't care if you've never interacted with the police. If this bridge is not if this gap between the community and the police is not bridged, it's going to affect you. So absolutely, I'm pretty sure most departments you can just walk in, and if you can't talk to an officer, then I'm pretty sure you can say, hey, this is very important. They will make sure they set a time apart for you.
Okay. Thank you. Pastor Ford, what do you think is really dividing us?
Ignorance. Once again, I think that when we begin to talk to each other rationally and empathize, feel one another's heartbeat, it's amazing how much we can put aside things that were big before. I think that ignorance is, and by that I'm talking about not being aware of, and not being good students, not being good listeners. Of course, I think our backgrounds work against us. There's so many things, as the officer said, we have to unlearn, that we find out was not true. But I think if we made ourselves students of other cultures, especially people that are different than us, whether it's color, we talk about differences in 4 ways: colors, cultures, congregations, and classes of people. And then we want to build bridges of understanding.
Okay, so to both of you, how do you plan to make strides in the community to bring more unity?
Well, one of the things we're doing is once a year we have a major event at the John S. Knight Center. It's called the Love Akron Leadership Breakfast, Servant Leadership Breakfast. We have over 650 people that come to that at 7 in the morning. So it's really amazing to get people up that early. But this year, our theme is loving our city to life. And one theme we're going to drive throughout the entire event is civility. And we're bringing in 2 people, interesting enough, that are from Michigan. One's a former crooked white cop who framed a black man and sent him to prison for 4 years. And they crossed the bridge and they become best friends, and they're going around the nation telling their story. They were just on Steve Harvey, they were on CBS News, and they've just written a book, and our event's going to be their first book signing. That's on September the 26th. So that's just a little way that we do that. We also do it, we have 3 pillars to our mission: prayer, unity, and collaborative ministry. So we use our prayer events as an opportunity to try to tear down those walls, because if you pray for somebody or with someone, it's amazing how you feel differently about them.
Well, of course, I'm still speaking. I have several speaking engagements. I do Facebook Live because it seems like everybody anywhere can tune in. I ask questions. People will send me questions of Officer Jones, how do you handle this? I always let people see it from the side of being a female, being a mother, but then I also let them see the side of being an officer and how we see it. So they get to see both sides. A lot of times people don't get to see both sides. Like, I get to live both sides because everybody have been, talking about this African American community, the police. So me being an African American mother, and I'm also, a police officer, I get to live both lives. So it's easy for me to speak on both sides, and they respect that. Of course, I'm spreading love. I go to my schools in my community, volunteer in my schools. When Tamir Rice was shot, I went to the schools and talked to the young kids, and it's funny to talk to them and say, if you had to play gun, and I drove up and I approached you and I said, do you have a gun? All of those children said, we will reach and say, it's not real. They don't understand. So I had to educate them. So I'm trying to educate people. I'm also writing a book. It's called The Truth Divided. And it's amazing. Like I said, when I read the book, I get emotional. My mom has read it. It's really hard because you get to see it from both sides. You get to see it from the side of being a police officer and saying, do you understand, greater love has no man than this, and a man will lay down his life for a friend. That's what officers do. That means if somebody came in and right now shooting, I would jump in the way of both of you. And this is my first time ever meeting you, and I know for a fact that I would. People don't understand how serious it is. A chance I may not go home to my daughters, that's my job. But then it also shows you my struggle. It tells you a lot. The book is really, really good, but it's built to bridge the gap. And then I come to things that people invite me, I come because I know how important it is, and I want to make sure that I am doing what God has called me to do.
Thank you. And I am your host, Leah Love. If you are just joining us and tuning in, we are talking to Pastor Mark Ford of the Love Akron Network and Officer Nakia Jones. And we are talking about unity in your community through civility. So how do you think that people can genuinely connect with each other?
I encourage people to, have you ever played tic-tac-toe? Put yourself in that middle, and all around that, play like that's your neighborhood. Do you know your neighbors around you? Do you know the people you work with around you? So I think, once again, it starts at the lowest common denominator, and that is, hey, let's get acquainted. Tell me, how'd you get here, you know? And so I think if we can just be real, we're human, but if we be just really real with each other in a loving way, people will, I think for the most part, give you a pass when you don't always do it perfectly.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's move on to hope. What does hope mean to you, and what does it look like for our future without hope?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I preached a whole sermon about this. I was at a time in my life where I was really having a difficult time. And I was speaking in Montreal, Quebec, and I was preaching on hope that night. And I just breathed a prayer and I said, God, I need a soundbite from heaven. Help me to understand hope. And just dropped in my heart an acrostic. Hope is having, optimistic, that's positive, persevering, never quitting, expectation. You never quit believing at any moment that things can change for the better. It's hope is having, optimistic, persevering, expectation. You just keep believing, keep looking up.
And what does it look like if we have no hope?
Well, I know what it looks like to different people. People give up on themselves, and they give up on that something good could come. That's why my faith is so important to me, and it's very obvious that Officer Jones's faith is important to her, because it's in that we find hope. For me, it's in Christ. But those that do not have a faith, sometimes their hope is because they don't know really where to turn to find hope. And so I think that's why it's important, whether it is every church, every synagogue, every mosque, every temple, every police station, every school should have hope givers, because people are looking. I think that's probably one of the most deadly things that's happening right now in our culture, is people have lost hope.
Okay, what role does fear play, and how can it be addressed?
Fear actually is probably the most deadliest thing you can have in your life. Fear can cause so many emotions and so many negative actions. Fear destroys hope, actually. If I'm afraid, I have no hope. I'm afraid. I'm not thinking rationally. I'm so afraid. I'm terrified. And that actually scares me when people say, I'm afraid of the police. That's terrifying for me as a police officer, because I don't know how you're going to react to me. It's almost like an animal that's backed up into a corner. Mm-hmm. If I'm afraid, you don't know what my reaction is going to be. And then not only that, as parents, if you're that afraid of the police, you teach that fear to your children. Mm-hmm. And then your children teach it to their children. And now it's going on and on. So that fear is something that we really, 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 really have to, if we can diminish it, get rid of it. And the only way to do it is with hope. If you have hope, you start to break down that fear. And it's everything you said. When I think about hope, a dying hope is almost looking at a plant that's just looking, and you've seen it's just withering away. And it's withering away. Whereas hope to me is when you know for a fact, you look at this plant and say, oh, winter's coming. That's all right. When the spring comes, it's coming back. That's what hope means to me. And it's so, so important. And people are losing hope every day. It's almost like hope and faith to me they're hand in hand. And without hope, we are like doomed to me.
In fact, the Bible says hope precedes faith. And I have another acrostic for faith. Faith is facing all impossible and invisible things heavenward. It's facing them all by looking up and saying, I need help.
Love it. Okay, so our final question. The narrative that we have in the media, and we see so many time and time again, especially with the movie that just came out, Detroit, there's a lot of people in different minority communities who are afraid of the police, or who feel like the reality that they see on TV is actually what they see every single day. And you have a lot of mothers who have lost hope. What do you tell them to restore their hope and faith in the justice system?
First of all, no matter, and I tell people this, no matter what profession you're in, you're going to have bad and good people. It doesn't make a difference. You have amazing pastors. You have some pastors that shouldn't be pastors. You know, you have police officers in a position. Some of us shouldn't be police officers. So as a mother, my thing is, if you're afraid of police, get to know your police department. Get involved. Let them know that, listen here, I'm involved in my child's life. I'm involved in this community. I want to know who my police department is. I want to know who my officers is. You should be able to name your officers. Oh, that's Officer Jones. I know her. She lives in the community. Oh, that's Officer such and such. If you can't do that, it's an issue, especially if you're afraid. Get to know them. Sit down and talk to them. Ask them. Not only that, I tell people, if you're afraid, don't be afraid to say, I'm scared. Don't be afraid. I've had people I pulled over and shake, and I'm like, what's the matter? I'm just terrified. And then I reassure them, sweetie, you're fine. I'm a human being just like you. I'm doing a job. And you can see them go, sit down and talk to them. I think that departments need to start having community meetings. We don't. Where the community is able to come in and sit down and tell your fears. Because my question is, why are you afraid? And sometimes a lot of them will say, I don't know why I'm afraid. I have no idea. Why are you afraid? The movie Detroit, I haven't seen it yet. I am going to see it. It is a reality in some places. You know, and it is sad, but we're trying to bridge the gap. And as long as we're trying, and as long as we have hope, I believe that it's going to get better. And as long as you have officers that have a heart that doesn't have to be exactly like mine, but similar to mine, they're saying, we got to do better. This has to be better. And as long as you have the community saying, listen, we're on board. We want to do better. I just want to tell you real quick, I wanted to tell you this too, Pastor. When my video went viral and everything, it was really rough on me. I was broken. I was hurt. I had some hate mail that was horrible from even officers, that things that I would never say to anybody. So I was hurting, but the community was amazing. I had a young man that is a Crip. He contacted me, he said on Facebook, Officer Jones, I hated the police. This is what he said. But when I seen your video, it gave me hope. And I understand that all police officers are not bad. So I'm going to my police department. I've never talked to the police. I don't deal with them. So that we can get on this, because they were doing a peace rally after the Alton Sterling shooting. He said, I'm going to go to the police department and see if they will allow us to have this peaceful march. He said, and they did. Over 3,000 people showed up. There was no problems. Not only did the Crips come, the Bloods came. They tied their, remember, the last time they did this when Rodney King was beat. That's the last time that they joined together. They tied their scarves together, and you can see an officer standing on the side of them. They sent me the picture. Every time I think about it, I just get chills all over my body. If they can change and they can say for the better good, they can bridge the gap, so can we.
You might be interested in knowing that at this event where we're going to be featuring the subject of civility, we've interviewed 2 rock star police officers in Akron, and we're going to feature them to say, listen, yeah, there are a few out there that embarrass their own, but here's 2 that are just getting ready to retire, and we want to say thank you, and we want to hold them up as an example.
That is amazing.
All right. I hate to end our questions because this was really, really good. If you could give me in like 15 seconds a markism, something about you that you would like to leave people with.
I love humor. Okay. And I think life has become too serious. So my attitude is, whatever you need to do a little comic relief, find it. Because we all need a good laugh once in a while and a good cry.
Good. Well, I would like to thank Pastor Ford and Officer Jones for joining us today to share some ways we can help unify our communities and have a better tomorrow for our youth. Please make sure you are active in your community by helping to create solutions and participating in town hall meetings, local roundtables, and making an effort to understand and listen to the concerns of those around you. You can visit, for more information, the Love Akron Network at www.loveakron.org. I'm Leah Love, and thank you for joining us today on Forum 360 for a global outlook with a local view.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Akronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.